as I said, had just a great new year. We're going to start off. Our first panelist is Suzanne Gordon, author, Wounds of War, co-editor, The Culture and Politics of Healthcare Work, Senior Policy Fellow, Veterans Healthcare Policy Institute. We're going to be talking about VA healthcare. And first, let me wish you, Suzanne, a very, very happy New Year.
You too, Cliff. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. So tell us what is important. There's a lot of things, obviously, that are important. But what's the first things we need to hear?
Well, I think the most important thing for 2020 will be citing the continued efforts of the Trump administration VA leadership, Secretary Robert Wilkie, to decimate the Veterans Health Administration, which is the largest healthcare system in the country and the one that is particularly specialized in taking care of the complex needs of our nation's veterans. And in the coming year, we'll see more problems because of the passage of the VA Mission Act of 2018, the outsourcing of more care of veterans to the private sector, the failure of the administration to fully staff and fund the VA, and efforts to really deplete the budgets for clinical care at the VA. And those are challenges that we will see in the coming year.
Now, this is so important, Suzanne, and let me mention the fact, because I'm sure people will hear these things and want to know something more. The WVON call-in number is 312-374-8130. Tell us, why is this, what you're saying does not sound good at all. Tell us why this is happening.
Well, I think that President Trump claims he's the most veteran-centric president in the nation's history, and I think that's the farthest thing from the truth. And his policies hurt veterans in a number of ways, but one of the main ways is the attacks on the Veterans Health Administration, and 9 million veterans, 9 million of the country's 19.2 million veterans, which is almost half, depend on the VA for their health care. Mm-hmm. And it's a really great healthcare system. And but it's, it has a very big pot of money attached to it, which private sector providers would like to get a hold of, mm-hmm. $80 to $90 billion. It's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And there are people who are intent on privatizing it. I mean, we're going to see a lot of problems in the Senate because the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee has just been taken over by Senator Jerry Moran, who is a real privatizer. He receives more money from the Koch brothers, who are very anti-VA, than any other senator. And he was very opposed to even the current version of the Mission Act of 2018 because it didn't go far enough in privatizing VA care. And he wanted even more veterans to be seen in the private sector. And this in spite of the fact that we have study after study after study showing that private sector providers don't know about and even don't want to know about the very specific complex problems of veterans. And, this issue of the VA and the future of the VA is super important. I mean, I'm talking to you today from Los Angeles. I'm attending the Student Veterans of America conference, and it's supposed to be a group that's fighting for student veterans and particularly younger veterans, and there's been no mention hardly of the VA or VA privatization in this conference. It's really extraordinary. This is the number one challenge that veterans face, and this is, I think there can be no more important moment to talk about this when we see the conflict that is brewing in the Middle East. I mean, God forbid, if we had another war, we'd have more people coming back injured, more veterans to take care of. And right now, the VA is being put in a position where it can't adequately take care of veterans it already has enrolled because they are not hiring. There's 49,000 vacancies in the VA, and the secretary, who is statutorily required to run and fully staff the system, has said unabashedly that he's not interested. That's not a priority for him to be hiring more people. And when you talk about vacancies in the VA, you're talking about positions that exist, full-time equivalent positions that already exist. And these vacancies don't even cover new positions that are needed to create new programs, et cetera, et cetera. And so how can we be contemplating an increase in escalating conflicts in the world and at the same time be demolishing or jeopardizing the healthcare system that would take care of these people who fight for us and our freedoms and our nation? And we're taking apart the administration, along with a lot of conservatives and health industry people outside the VA, really are targeting the VA and are quite happy that there are vacancies, because vacancies cause delays, and then delays justify more outsourcing to private sector doctors and hospitals and other providers.
And where is Senator Moran from, Suzanne?
I think he's from Georgia. I'm sorry, I can't. Maybe he's not from Georgia. He's not from Georgia. I'm not sure where he's from. I think he might be from Kentucky, but I wouldn't swear to that.
Okay. Something you just mentioned, you brought it up, the Middle East. What do you think about that?
Oh, well, don't get me started. I mean, I think this is folly. And it's, again, an unconsidered sort of, it's like the tweets, you just sort of a knee-jerk reaction to escalate conflict in the world. It would be tragic if this was about taking attention off impeachment, which I think it might be.
I'm sorry, to take attention off of what, Suzanne?
Well, I mean, one way that you can take attention off the failures of a president or administration or impeachment is to start a war or conflict.
Sure. Right.
And people are focused on that. I mean, I think this is a tragic development. There were signs of positive movement in Iran and Iraq because of protests against problems in those regimes, and now everybody who was not united is now united against the U.S. I mean, this is not a good idea. I'm not a foreign policy expert. There are many people that I would recommend you have on your show who could talk more about this, Andrew Basovich being one of them, but who's a retired, I'm not sure if he was a lieutenant colonel or a colonel, taught at West Point, is a brilliant historian, and he taught at Boston University, but I don't think this is a good idea. But the point I'm trying to make is that when it comes to the VA, you want to have a very robust healthcare system for veterans because we don't know when there'll be another conflict. I mean, there's a lot of talk about American veteran population going down from 19 million to 15 million in 2043, which is, by the way, 23 years from now. A lot could happen then. I think you're going to see a lot more conflict in the world because of the failure of this administration and other places around the world to deal with climate change. I mean, Australia is burning up.
Yeah, right.
We're having, that's going to create a lot of conflict. The Pentagon, I mean, it's interesting that while the administration is denying the reality of climate change, Pentagon is focused very heavily on the reality of it and looking about that, how that can create conflict. You're going to, you have the potential for other conflicts. And even if you don't have any conflicts, and even if they get a handle on climate change, which is a very big if, you know, even if you had 15 million veterans and not 19, the veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan and the post 9/11 conflicts and even the post 9/11 military have a lot of healthcare problems. They have, because if you just look at people who served in combat, as you know, Cliff, you know, people who would have died in Vietnam or Korea or World War II, they're living today because of battlefield triage and technological advances, but they're living with humongous, you know, healthcare problems that will last a lifetime. A friend of mine is an Iraq military vet. He has 16 different problems, and he's 32 years old.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
so in 23 years, he's going to be 55. He has the body, he was told, of a 60-year-old. By the time he's 50, he's going to have the body, of a 90-year-old? I mean, people, you know, when you look at healthcare, you can't just look at how many bodies there will be. You have to look at what are the problems of those bodies.
The
and if
quality.
you have 12 different, you know, if you have 15 million people to take care of, or even half of those people to take care of, and, you know, they have 12 different conditions, that's really different than taking care of, you know, 15 million people who have, you know, just, you know, some one chronic condition or no condition.
No, you're right. You're right.
For the flu, you know.
Yeah, that's right. The quality of
I mean, it's
life.
kind of like, you know, I always tell people when you're looking at healthcare, it's like if you have two parents and two kids, you know, and the two kids are highly motivated and they get their homework done on time and they clean their room and, you know, they help with the chores, you might need only one parent. You can leave them alone sometimes. If you have two parents and you have two kids and one has, you know, Down syndrome and the other has cystic fibrosis or whatever, you need maybe 5 parents to take care of them.
Yeah,
so it's not a question of just, you know, stats. It's a question
numbers,
of it's not quantity, it's quality.
Good point. Not quality. Yeah, it's quality, not quantity. Yeah. One thing you mentioned, Suzanne, since you brought it up, I thought was, you know, this whole thing going on in the Middle East. Some people, you even brought up the fact that it could be a diversion from the impeachment, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're right on that when you brought it up. But listen to this. According to what we heard, Trump said, quote, he, meaning the deceased general, was planning an attack, but we got him, end quote. That's what our commander-in-chief
said. Yeah, but
said.
there's no proof of this.
Exactly. That's what I'm asking you. Where does this come from?
Well, I mean, did we not learn anything with Iraq when Colin Powell compromised his stellar career by saying that Iraq had chemical weapons when it was clear they didn't have any? I mean, I should be more judicious, except I'm so upset by this. These people will do anything. I mean, Donald Trump is a pathological narcissist, and this is a mental illness diagnosis. It means the person has no conception of other. I mean, this is not just me. He's clearly, I think, has a, you know, serious mental illness. He is, you know, pathological or malignant narcissist. I do not think he is capable of factoring in the consequences of his actions on other people. And the fact that we might, you know, for his narcissistic needs, be sacrificing our young men and women to go into battle for nothing. I mean, we already have Iraq and Afghanistan veterans supporting efforts to end these forever wars because they were there. And they see that that it's worthless, that it's created more problems. It is not making us safer. It is making us, you know, it is endangering us. It created ISIS. It's created instability. I mean, veterans who are listening in should be calling their Congress people and saying that they should take control. It should be Congress that declares war, not one man or woman for their personal needs or gain. And this, I've seen this. I mean, having spent years in VA facilities, war is not a good idea. It's a bad idea. The worst idea. You should only do it when you must. And even the war on Hitler was not necessary because he could have been stopped a decade before. And none of these 60 million people would have had to have lost their lives if he had been stopped when he could have been stopped. So to invite catastrophe, it's one thing if you fail to stop it, but to invite it.
Suzanne, you're great, and of course your knowledge and study and all. And our last minute, where do you think this is going?
Well, I really think veterans need to speak up, and military service members need to speak up, and we need to defend the VA. We need to adequately defend our country. And if we believe that America has standing as a shining light in the world, then we have to shine. And you don't shine by creating unnecessary wars, and you don't shine by killing an excellent healthcare system. You shine by defending peace and promoting peace and defending high-quality healthcare.
I totally agree with you, and I think you're doing a great job. We are so pleased to have had you on, Suzanne, and I'm sure we'll be asking you again for your expertise. And,
thank you, Cliff. I so appreciate what you do.
And thank you so much. And we'll be talking soon, and Happy New Year to you.